Dr Kennedy-Graham.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Minister for Climate Change Issues, can he point to anything to show New Zealand's net greenhouse gas emissions are reducing in light of a call from Pacific Island leaders for a clear demonstration of this?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Tim Groser.
Yes. I can point to the one internationally legally binding commitment New Zealand has with respect to its net emissions, which is under the Kyoto Protocol, and I'm pleased to report that we are reducing our net emissions at least to the level and quite probably below a quarter of a century ago in 1990.
True.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy-Graham.
Given that his own government's figures show that our net emissions will rise 50% over the next 10 years, on what basis can he tell New Zealanders with family members in the Pacific that he is doing all he can for their brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, friends, children when it comes to climate change?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Tim Groser.
Well, since the member didn't particularly like the statistics from the official Kyoto repertoire, let me just remind them that in the 5 years of this government, between 2008 to 2012, we have reduced the level of net emissions compared with the 5 years under the previous government, 2003 to 2007, by 9%, 11%.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy-Graham.
Does the Minister support statements made by the Finance Minister that climate change is a non-issue? And if so, does he believe it's a non-issue for our Pacific neighbours?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Tim Groser.
Again, a classic example of taking something out of context. The government is pursuing more than one policy objective. Climate change is absolutely one of them, but we're trying to produce answers that meet demands of New Zealanders across a broad range of concerns, and I'm very confident we've got a winning formula.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr Kennedy-Graham.
Has his government been too busy wooing oil company executives and spending $850,000 to help host the last petroleum conference at Sky City to notice the plight of our Pacific neighbours, or is it that they have noticed and don't care?
Honourable Tim Groser.
Mr Speaker, putting aside the preceding remarks around our efforts to produce our own petroleum resources and create jobs and employment in regions that will vastly benefit from that, let me just point out with respect to the Pacific that this government has spent $90 million on Fast Start climate change finance, the vast bulk of which is in the Pacific, that this government supported with the cooperation of the European Union the Renewable Energy Conference in Auckland in 2013, which produced $635 million of bids for projects for the Pacific, an example of which, with respect to the Cooks, will be the creation of 8 new solar generation systems and upgrades of their distribution system in 6 islands of the Cooks.
Point of order. Point of order, sir.
Point of order, Dr Kennedy-Graham.
I seek leave of the House to table a UN document dated 2012, which shows that New Zealand's net greenhouse gas emissions have increased 22%.
Order. The document has now been described. I'll put the leave assault to table, a United Nations document 2012. Is there any objection? Yes. There is objection. Supplementary question to Ururoa, Flavell.
Tēnā koe, Mr Speaker. Thank you very much. To the Minister, does he agree with the submission from iwi leaders to the expert review panel that New Zealand's biannual report is inaccurate and misleading, and that New Zealand's strategy to meet its medium and long-term emissions reduction obligations were fundamentally flawed, and if not, why not?
Mr Speaker.
Honourable Tim Groser.
Absolutely not. New Zealand's biennial report is compiled by New Zealand experts, consistent with the methodologies of the UNFCCC. It is then reviewed by international experts. The criticism is completely misguided.
Supplementary.
Further supplementary to Ururoa, Flavell.
Kia ora koe, Mr Speaker. To the Minister, what will he do in response to concerns from Hapu and iwi Māori that there has been negligible investment in low emissions technologies resulting in foresters leaving the climate change scheme?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Tim Groser.
What we will do is explain once again the very extensive research and investments this government has in fact done in low emissions technologies and renewable energies, starting with the $45 million we've allocated to the Global Research Alliance, which is addressing 49.4% of New Zealand emissions, the additional substantial monies to the Primary Growth Partnership Agreements, the additional substantial millions to the consortium of companies which is doing pastoral greenhouse gas research, the $42 million research we have committed over the last 5-year period to advance biofuels, and I could go on.
Question number 10, Andrew Little.
Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Labour. What measures